3, 2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to Sumter School District Board of Trustees Policy Committee meeting. Would you please join me for a meditative thought followed by the Pledge of Allegiance? First, we apologize for my tardiness this evening. This meeting is held in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The news media has been notified and a copy of the agenda has been made available to the public. This meeting is open to the public, but with limited first-come, first-served seating due to COVID-19. All persons wishing to attend the meeting by virtual means may do so via YouTube, Sumter School District Board Meetings, and Sumter School District's Facebook page. Mission. The mission of Sumter School District is to equip students to be responsible, successful, and productive citizens in a global society. Vision. Sumter School District develops and cultivates competitive students who embrace diversity, act responsibly, and contribute positively to society. Committee members present tonight: myself, Brian Austin, Chairman of the Policy Committee, Reverend Dr. Darrell McGaney, Ms. Cheryl Ray, Dr. Gloria Lee. We have some of our subcommittee members here in person. Subcommittee members Adrian Singletary, Attorney Andrea Loney, and Councilman Dr. Steve Corley are here in person. Joining us virtually is Ms. Rosa Hilton and Dr. Shirley Gamble. Again, welcome to the Sumter School District Board of Trustees Policy Committee meeting. And thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be here this afternoon to deal with this very important business of the district. With no further remarks, we'll go down to item 2, the agenda, approval of the agenda. Everyone should have had a chance to review the agenda. I'm sorry, I didn't see our mayor sitting over here as well.
I'm sorry. I apologize for being so loud out there. Thank you for letting me join.
If there's no objections to the agenda will stand approved. Hearing none, the agenda stands approved. We're now down to item 3, review of policies and possible amendments. 3.1, review of policy ACB, educational equity, and sample policy ACA, and ACA-R equity. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Martin and her administration for an update on where we are with the educational equity policy.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Austin, members of the Sumter School District Policy Committee, and to our subcommittee members. This evening we have Dr. Lamont Moore, who has been given the charge and the task to look at our equity policy and to do some work with our policy, as well as the work with a select group of individuals who are serving as a focus group to do this work collectively. So at this time, Dr. Moore, would you please share with us any updates that you may have as it pertains to the equity policy and the equity work?
Absolutely, and good evening to each of you. Right now, we are in a great place with equity. We're waiting for the procurement process to finish. And so if any of you understand that procurement process is a lot of different procedures that we have to put in place to make sure that we are giving everyone an opportunity to provide some services for us. So we're looking to secure a vendor that is going to help us with the equity audit that will give us a comprehensive view of our district and our practices in the district, and hopefully uncover some areas that will need our attention as we start to respond to equity. So that process is underway, and we're in the midst of that. In the meantime, what we are focusing on with our equity team and our next meeting will focus on making some meaningful connections to other school districts and other groups and organizations who have been doing the work of equity, to familiarize ourselves with what the work will entail after the equity audit is done. So I've made some contacts with some neighboring districts who are also in similar processes, or in a lot of ways have already completed some of the steps that we're completing with equity. And we want to bring those members to our equity team so that we can have some candid conversations about the work, the pros and cons of the work, things to kind of be proactive about as we get prepared to jump into the work in the spring. We also want to look at some professional development opportunities for the equity team members to familiarize ourselves with some of the things that we may not be aware of, and to build capacity in the team as it relates to equity. And finally, we want to start looking at some equity plans, because at the end of the day, after the equity audit is finished, we want to develop a plan of action to start addressing some of the equity issues alongside the help of our third-party consultant. But we want to start looking at some equity plans that have already been completed in South Carolina, start taking a look at those and seeing some of the strategies that other districts are considering as we're talking with them, so that we can make sure that we're responding the best way we can, and we're ready when that time comes. So that's what we're working on now. We are in that procurement process, waiting to finish all of those different pieces, and then as we are waiting, we're educating ourselves and making some connections with some other people in our state who are doing the same work. Any questions for me?
I have one. As you look at other districts, are you taking into consideration districts that are similar in size, or counties that have one school district that are similar in size with the same similar economic demographics, just the whole similar?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
Yes, ma'am, we are. So we're wanting to find out, we want to do an apples and apples comparison. We don't want to go to a larger district that may have totally different situation, totally different demographics, and we don't want to go to districts that are smaller as well. So we're looking for districts that are similar to ours, relatively in the same area of the state. Some of the districts that we've looked at or made connections to are, we've been looking at Richland 2. We're also interested in looking at what's being done in Marion and Marlborough County, because they've done work with one of the companies that we're interested in. Jasper County is smaller than our county, but they're also doing some work in that as well. And then Greenville is a lot larger, but they have also been working with their policy as well. So we have a mix of different districts that we're looking at, but we hope to kind of pull some things from each of them. But within that mix, we're looking at districts that are similar to ours as well.
And may I add to that? And so the question that you pose is very, very important, that we look at districts that are similar to ours. He mentioned Richland 2 because Richland 2 is a front runner in the work. And so lessons learned, even though they don't compare to us, they've already started the work, they're really entrenched in the work. And so we're just looking at the work that they've done and the path, the way that they paved thus far in terms of getting this work. Because they're one of very few districts that have an equity policy in the state.
Why are you all looking at Greenville? I mean, because it's so, again, so different. I mean, it is just one school district,
Yes, ma'am.
but the social economic status, all of those things in Greenville, there's absolutely no comparison.
Absolutely, and they're the same as Richland.
Okay,
They're
okay,
in this
okay,
work.
okay.
So
So
they're
you're just
like-
looking at them for a framework?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But that's a good question, absolutely.
Is there any more questions, either in person or virtually at this time? Dr. Moore, I actually have a couple of questions myself. At the beginning of the year, I attended the SCASPA annual convention, and one of the breakout sessions was around educational equity. And I'm not sure of where the equity team is as far as, I know you said you're in the procurement process right now, but as a team, have you defined some of the essential terms that surround the work with equity as a school district? some of the terms of like,
Yeah.
what is educational equity, diversity, inclusion, things of that nature?
Yes, one of our first meetings that we had, we really had to take some time to unpack what equity means to each of us, what it doesn't mean, what it does mean, look at some research, hear from some of the experts. And so we tried to start from that point. It was refreshing to see that many of us thought in very similar ways about equity, and it did align to a lot of the research that we were seeing. But that was important to start there. And so we spent our first session really unpacking what equity is, what it means to us, what it looks like, and what it looks like in schools. And so we did take some time to do that. Now, we hope to continue that as well, as we look at some more professional development and grow in the area and make sure that we are staying abreast to the latest and the most recent research that is related to equity as well. So it's something that we're constantly trying to make sure that we're aware of.
And another question, as far as the audit is concerned, do you have a list of exactly what the audit will look at as far as the school district and where we are when it comes to equity in the district?
Well, we were looking at two companies, and they really outlined what they would assess in the equity audit if they're chosen to work with us. So each of them are very similar. They kind of go through most of the district operations, from spending practices to hiring practices to instructional practices. And so there are key things that, they all go through as far as the audit is concerned. But yes, so each of those companies kind of presented, what they would be doing in that audit process to us.
Piggybacking on your statement, there has been a lot of discussion amongst the community as far as facilities are concerned and educational resources that are available to our students. Do you know off the top of your head if either of those companies address facilities or address educational resources? When I say educational resources, that's everything from academic program offering to the actual tools that are used to educate our students each and every day.
Yes, and so they will be looking at what the student experience is from top to bottom, even as it pertains to nuances that may exist at some schools that may not exist at others. And so the opportunity that students have will be taken into consideration in the audit as well. So they will be looking at not only the resources that are available to students, but the condition of the facilities, and also the spending practices, roughly how much is being allotted to each student's experience at that particular school, and making comparisons between the schools.
That's a question.
A lot of that will also come in some of the qualitative research they'll pull. So they will have a lot of sessions with focus groups with parents, where they sit down with those groups and students to hear from them, as well as looking at some of the desk audit items, looking at the books to see what the practices have been. So a lot of that piece I would imagine will come through actually talking to community members and students and teachers about their experiences and what students have available to them at that school. But that part is also a part of the audit process.
I don't know whether you can answer this question because this goes to another committee, but to what extent, if any, is the issue of education equity playing in this whole school realignment question?
So, another very good question. So, when we are doing the work around the realignment, that's one of the reasons why we have to do professional development.
Right.
Because everything we do
Right.
needs to be viewed through an equitable lens.
Right.
And so, have we had that PD yet? We have not. But that's one of the benefits of having the input from the community, having the board participate in this process, so that we can all bring our lived experiences to the table. So there is conversations around the needs, but also that there's a balance of voices at the table.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just a quick question. Do you have a matrix of how we will measure if we've accomplished, let's say 5 years from now, we have another review? Are we gonna do it by grade or by school, or how are we gonna measure that we've improved in this area?
So different companies have different approaches to it. Normally, what it seems to be, the two that we've been looking at, they will start with the equity audit and then you create a plan. In most cases, it's like a 3-year plan. In some instances, it goes up to 5 years. But the idea is that you do an audit of the entire district, find the places where you can respond to any equity issues, you create goals and measurable objectives to go with it. If it's a 3-year plan, after that 3rd year or going into the 4th year, you would have another audit to see, to compare, to see if there's been some improvement in the practices and what the community and the students are saying comparatively. If it's 5 years, of course, you'll have that extra 2 years in between the equity audits. And so the idea is that the comprehensive audit is what drives the creation of the plan, and we implement the plan within either a 3 or 5 year time limit. After that time, we will do another audit to see our progress.
Thank you.
Dr. Moore, I have one more question for you. I promise you, just one more question regarding educational equity. A part of educational equity is establishing a framework that embeds educational equity into the strategic decision-making, the operational decision-making, and the organizational decision-making. I'm assuming that this framework will be formed out of this audit when we're in the process of creating the plan that we will implement to address educational equity in the district?
Yes, and so the key is having some experts to come and do the work alongside us, but ideally what will happen is you have the equity plan that is created that will start allowing us to start mirroring the best practices as it relates to equity and start shifting our practices. And so we're monitoring along the way, and at the same time, we have consultants that can help us stay along that path, and we're starting to start that transition to maybe adjust and tweak some behaviors that we may not have been aware of. And of course, we're doing professional development. We're doing a lot of different things to start addressing mindsets and to start addressing some of the habits that we may have that may be causing some equity issues that we may not be aware of. And so that whole process is it's an organic process, but it's designed to start with the hard data and then to start with what community members and students have said, using that data to kind of start educating ourselves and changing some practices with the help of a consultant. But all of it will be organizational and start guiding how we make decisions as it relates to spending and hiring and educating students and teachers and all of our staff members.
And so what we have to do is, while we're doing this work, is it can't be a framework of equity over here and everything else over here.
Yes, it's-
And it goes back to what Ms. Loney's question was earlier today. In the midst of us working on our 5-year strategic plan, it has to be encompassed within.
Right.
Oh, I can't see that far. It has to be encompassed within, otherwise it's a standalone. It needs to be integrated with everything that we do each and every day, whether it's about technology, instruction, facilities, finances, hiring, all those factors that we utilize to determine our effectiveness as a district. It has to be established as one complete unit. And it also goes to your comment, your question, Mr. Corley, in terms of how do we measure. There will be some qualitative aspects to this that we can observe and we can measure, but we can also get to the place where we need to by continuing to encourage the voice of our community and of our students and of our staff to give surveys to see if we are in the same place where we were when we started this process. If we're looking at the data from a survey and it's still stagnant or it's not showing any growth or improvement, that means that plan that we've developed needs to be adjusted. And so there's a process of continuous school improvement where you plan, you study, you implement, and then you act upon it, and you make adjustments throughout the whole process. And so that's so important that we do that, because this is not going to be a process where we create a plan and then the plan just sits there. It has to be a part of everything we do. And so we're in the process, again, of our 5-year strategic plan. It has to be encompassed within that plan, so that we are looking at meeting the needs of all of our students, our staff, and our community. And I couldn't see your notes.
So now that you said all of that,
Yes, ma'am.
at the very end of what you just said, have we given any consideration to, because what is equity? You know, that's the question. What is equity? And in so many places now, that word doesn't stand alone. It's normally, oftentimes, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Yes, ma'am.
When you look at these other districts, words mean a lot, a whole lot. And I'd like for you all, when you look at these other districts, to see if they're just saying education equity, or if they're using these other words in this whole assessment.
Yes, ma'am. You're absolutely correct. And Dr. Moore, the first 2 or 3 meetings they had with the focus group, Dr. Moore, and I know I'm not creating something in my head that I didn't see, but didn't you all do a gallery walk when I came in to participate that time to get to what Ms. Loney's point is about equity, equality, inclusion, like, because there are graphs out there that talk about equity versus equality, and they don't mean the same
But
thing.
they
One
don't
is
mean
giving
the same
students and
thing.
people what they need, the other one is making everybody have the same playing field. Didn't you already engage in that type of activity with the focus group, just to streamline and to ensure that the vocabulary that we were using is consistent?
Yes, that's part of one of the activities that we did at the beginning, because the terms, sometimes people use them interchangeably and they're not interchangeable. So we wanted to make sure that we knew the difference. And there's a great graphic that's out there that allowed us to hone right into what is equity, what's equality, what's the difference between the two. And so we spent a lot of time talking about that. And then we also did a self-assessment within the group of where we thought the district was on that continuum, and that led us into some great discussions as well. And so we did spend some time unpacking those terms.
But my point is, it's not just enough for your group to spend time unpacking the terms, but as we go forward with this consultant and what we're looking at, these terms, these things are unpacked and they are considered and they are used and they're defined and the assessment has to include. Because I commend the group for spending the time to learn the difference, but we have to carry that all the way through this whole process. So I'll shut up.
Dr. Moore, thank you so much, and thank you for the hard work that you and your team are doing to get this audit done, the plan and the policy to fruition. And I'll just say to my colleagues here, we as a committee and we as a board and we as a community have to embrace the work that's going into educational equity. As Ms. Loney alluded to and as Dr. Martin Knox alluded to as well, we have to live and breathe this if we want to actually have educational equity in Sumter School District. And as a board and as a policy committee, we are charged with being the policy-making body of the district. And that is going to be, we have to work in tandem with the consultant, with the equity team, as well as the community to make sure that our policies and our rules and regulations in the district cater and foster to the work that's going into this audit right now. So I would just say that, ask that as a committee that we send back to the full board, that we will continue to work alongside the equity team to continue the discussion and continue to work around educational equity, if that's okay with everyone on the committee. Okay.
One quick comment, and this may be a side comment, but back to what Mrs. Lone, we're talking about equality of funding, equality of opportunity. I think that's the key. We just have to focus on making sure that as much, now, we're gonna have neighborhood schools that have strengths. One school, you know, whatever, I represent Willow Drive and Croswell, you know, I mean, so they have particular strengths. That doesn't mean that every elementary school in the district, whatever, 20-some elementary schools have the same strengths. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Exactly.
We have to have equal funding and equal opportunity of experiences as much as possible. There will be some differences.
But and that's my point in using more than the word equity,
Yeah,
because what does that mean?
that's a high goal to make.
Right.
I mean, our obligation is to be sure every student in this county has the best
Right.
educational experience possible in their school. And then, as we work towards equity, we're going to find some areas where we can do better. But there will, I mean, it's a very high goal. And Dr. Moore, you understand that. You've been on these teams before. But there will be strengths in some neighborhood schools that we can't duplicate everywhere. That doesn't mean there isn't equity or movement towards equity. Sorry, talk too much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to add, as we fine tune this process and we look at equity across the district, let's keep in mind our Title I schools when we talk about equity. Because Title I schools are priority schools. And when we talk about equity, there's some things that Title I schools must have in order for them to get where the other schools are. So as we talk about equity, and I always use the phrase that when you look at sports, the worst football team with the worst record gets first pick at the draft. So our priority schools, and I stand on the forefront of that, need to have first pick when we talk about equity, and we look at funding and things that they should have. All our schools, we should look at all our schools when it comes to equity, but most important, our priority schools. Thank you.
They should be included in the,
Correct.
If there's no further discussion on the review of policy ACB, educational equity, and sample policy ACA and ACA-R equity, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Hearing no further discussion, we're down to item 3.2, review of policy ABA, school district goals and objectives. This policy is back at the policy committee for further consideration. There were some concerns or some discussion around revisions to the proposed revised vision and mission statement, and I'll open the floor up for any discussion to my colleagues in person, and then I'll go to those that are virtually.
Yes, I'll start it off, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Board members brought to my attention that they still would like to see collaboration between the old policy and the new policy. However, what's being proposed, and we kudos to all our stakeholders and buy-ins and all the hard work they've done thus far. However, the policy, they seem to still be a little bit too wordy and too long. You talk about mission and vision, it needs to stand out where it's something that we can remember throughout our school district, you know, once we get something in place. So I'm proposing, as well as some of the board members, that this committee here maybe look at fine-tuning the process, and I'm talking subcommittee and even the district staff. Let's look at trimming the words down a little bit more, and that's just one opinion coming from me. I don't know if anybody else have anything you want to say.
okay. Having been in the room the night the committee voted on it, I just sat there and I didn't say anything, but I think it's too long. because as the district goes through this whole process of doing the equity, inclusion, et cetera, study, as we go through this whole process of the school realignment, when we come up with a mission that we agree on, this is an opportunity, I think, for us to rebrand, remarket, if you will, our school district.
That's true.
Because we've been through a lot of stuff since the whole merger. I mean, really have. And we've been all this infighting and all of this, whatever we've been doing. It's been community against community, whatever we've been doing. I think our mission statement needs to be as short as we can make it so that we can put it on everything. So we can put it on our stationery, so we can put it everywhere as a part of saying, this is who we are. This is the new district. As we're looking at our strategic plan, as we're looking at all of it. This statement is really, it's too long. And I think that, I agree that we should, I sat here a few minutes ago and I almost rewrote the thing to say exactly what it says, but not in so many words. So I agree that we should just try to not have it quite so long.
And Mr. Chairman, I've also had, looking at it from other board members, looking at our current, what's in place, you know, to compete in the global society and all that, and then this every child, every day, and all that. I've had recommendations, do away with it and come back with something fresh, new and short. Very short. Very short. Throw away the old part and this recommend, and let everybody come together, the district, the subcommittee, and let's come up with something short. If that means get away from what's already in place now and what's proposed, and I know one board member want to merge it, but even in the merge, it's still too long. So that's just my thoughts for me.
And if we know that board members are already voicing some objections to it, and I don't have no clue how many or anything like that, all we can do is make a recommendation. If we know that they're already concerned about it because it may be too long and too convoluted, why not take the opportunity to try to go back, look at their comments, pay attention to their comments, and try to go back and just shorten it some.
If I may, there has been a lot of work that has gone into it, and I think that
I agree.
where we are right now in the process is that we as a board and we as a committee, outside of voting on the proposed changes, when it was on the survey, we have not done our due diligence. We have not submitted suggestions for revisions to it ourselves. It's one thing to say that we have an issue with how something is presented, but we have to take ownership as well and present ideas of how to fix it.
And I agree with
And
that.
we agree, I agree.
That's why I started out with what I said.
Right.
I mean, I acknowledge that I sat there and didn't say anything when I was thinking, this is too much.
So,
And so I acknowledge that I'm guilty of what you just said.
and just to piggyback on what both of you have said, I think that it's been brought to the table, a revision, and I heard Ms. Loney mention rebranding our school district. And I think that we need to meet the recommendations of the committee with recommendations from us as a committee. When I say recommendations of the committee, recommendations of the strategic plan committee that worked on the vision and mission statement. We shouldn't do away completely with what has been recommended from them, but we should work on it as a committee to come up with something
I agree.
that all stakeholders can agree to. And so that's what we're tasked with tonight.
Let's do that, let's do that.
I mean,
So can I turn it over to Dr. Martin Knox and to Ms. Galloway, as far as where they are, because I'm sure they have been engaged in the process as well all along and have heard, some of the concerns of the board as far as the length of the vision and mission statement and some of the comments surrounding suggestions.
And so thank you all for your feedback and your input. And so just for the broader audience, just to have an understanding of where we began, there are requirements that we need to look at our strategic plan. And when you move forward with the strategic plan, the foundation of the plan is your vision and mission. So it has to be right. It has to be something that is a part of who we are. We live it, we breathe it, we know it. And so when we began the process, we encompassed the voices of students, teachers, community, staff, you name it, they were involved in the process. And we wanted to make sure we, again, looked at it from an equitable standpoint with giving everyone the opportunity to have input in this process. By no means did we mean to have a very long mission statement. But when we created the vision and mission statement, the purpose for it coming to the policy committee and to the board is to begin to take a part or to contribute to what had been developed. So it was not finite when we brought it forward. It was brought forward with some of the ideas. And so Ms. Galloway led the work that we began a very long time ago. And so when you began to hear the conversation of our staff, of our community, when they were in it, they were so entrenched and immersed in this work and in this process, it turned out to be a large task where we sat back and said, what do we do away with? And so we continue to get feedback from everyone involved. I will also say that we are a group of leaders who listen. And so what has happened is Ms. Galloway and I'm going to stop talking because I think I'm getting ready to step on your toes. And I see Dr. Gamble smiling, so I know I'm about to step on your toes. So at this time, I'm going to step back, and Ms. Galloway and Dr. Gamble and Ms. McBride and Mr. Easley, they're on here to contribute to the conversation and to share with you where we are. And you are more than welcome to say, no, Penelope, you all stepped too far ahead. Or this is something that we'd like to contribute. So Ms. Galloway, I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Chairman Austin and Superintendent Dr. Mark Knox and members of the Policy Committee. I would like to take an opportunity to also welcome our representatives from TAC, Mr. Robert Easley. He represented our Teacher Advisory Council, very instrumental in helping to develop the mission and vision. And also two of our principals are here, Dr. Gamble from Crestwood High School and Mrs. Michelle McBride from Pocahontas Springs Elementary School. We have heard the concerns of the board and with especially the length of the mission statement. It was my understanding that the vision statement was okay. One board member had actually suggested combining the two vision statements, but that would make it even longer. So with the help of, or the leadership of Dr. Gamble, there are some recommendations for shortening the mission statement, and I would like to share those with you at this time.
Do we have that?
She's going to close it.
I can, hold on, let's see. Bear with me 1 second, I'm sorry.
Can she share her screen?
she can.
Okay. So the current mission statement is a little lengthy, and recommendations were made. We have two recommendations for revisions. The first one being the mission of Sumter School District is to provide a safe, nurturing, and rigorous educational environment that equips students for local and global success. And another recommendation is the mission of Sumter School District is to provide a high-quality curriculum to ensure our students acquire the knowledge, skills, and core values necessary for local and global success. Once again, you're correct with, the vision statement. The vision statement needs to be concise, is where we're going. The mission statement is how we're going to get there. So the mission statement usually is a little bit longer than the vision statement. We did hear what the recommendations were, and that was to shorten it. And so if anybody from Mr. Easley or Dr. Gamble or Mr. Pride want to chime in on this recommended revisions or the process of what we went through, y'all are welcome to this time.
Thank you very much. This is Mr. Easley, and I'm from Hillcrest Middle School, and I teach science. And I know, as having spent 26 years in the military, a mission statement is extremely important because it is that statement that when people think about a district or a squadron or the military, that's what they're going to remember. And so to keep it short and to the point is definitely an important thing. So I was just kind of kicking around some stuff as we were talking. You might saw me looking around a little bit. But I really like the idea of the fact that we are one now. We're not two separate school districts, we're one school district. So if we included something like one team acting together to provide quality education to all students and to instill in them the skills needed to make meaningful contributions to a 21st century global community. So guys, I don't know if that would be something, or perhaps too long, but that's just something I came up with really quick trying to do, because that kind of gets that idea of unity together and what our mission is, that we are one team working all together to provide each and every student with a quality education and to also give them the skills that they need to survive in not just a local community setting or local community, but our students are competing against students from around the world. We live in a global community. If we don't address that, we are definitely going to be very, very far behind.
Thank you. Dr. Gamble or Mr. Fred?
Again, to Chairman Austin, Dr. Martin Johnson, Policy Committee, I do agree as well when we're talking about the mission statement. Definitely we need to shorten it. So I looked at, when I was looking at it, I just feel like the work that the groups have already done, I think we should try to keep some of that language so then making them feel that their work, is all in vain. So I think any way that we can sort of shorten what the original statement was, I think would be helpful. And again, I said, I think we would definitely need to try to keep some of the verbiage the same.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
I certainly agree with Dr. Gilman. I'm sorry to Chair Austin and Dr. Martin Knox in the Policy Committee. Less is more, and I think coming from an elementary point of view, the preschool brain, you tend to look if it's too wordy, something's too wordy, people just tend to kind of overlook it. So I definitely agree, but I certainly agree with Mr. Easley with the global success, ensuring that we have that. But I'm kind of partial to, I think at the very beginning, talking about the social emotional needs. I think because everything that we've gone through with the pandemic, I think that's crucial as well. That's just my opinion. Why are you laughing?
I'm just smiling. Thank you.
Ms. Sullivan?
Can I ask a question of the group who initially wrote it? What do we mean by core values? And I'm asking that because who decides what a core value is? I'm asking it because I'm trying to go back to us keeping some of the verbiage, because I agree with you about that. I mean, I to say high quality, diverse curriculum, knowledge, skills, emotional support to be successful. I'm not sure about the core values because
Who defines that?
who defines that? And how do we, if we have to define that in order for us to ensure that the school district ensure children have that. I'm just
So you
asking.
can have members of the core group, Mr. Chair?
I'm just asking, I'm not judging, I'm good.
Now, I don't know if the committee did that, but we do have the core values and beliefs listed in, right under the vision and mission. I didn't know if y'all did any revision of that,
It's on the,
but, that was what had been agreed on at some point, I'm assuming.
Yes.
I think that was in the beginning.
Where's that, Ms. Ellis?
Yeah.
Scroll down from vision and mission.
Okay, I'll find it, pull it up.
It's right on the mission statement.
You got it?
Mission statement.
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment. I agree with Reverend McGann about simplification and what we've seen. I think sometimes when you duplicate information several times and keep using some jargon, I'm not sure that reaches the public. I appreciate what they've done, what I saw on the screen.
And again, that's just a model. Instead of us just tearing it completely apart and starting it all over again, we wanted to make sure we kept the voice of the number of individuals who participated in the development of the process without just destroying it, but coming back to the table with some ideas, again, to continue to get contributions to the work, because these are just samples. This is just, so when you talk about the core values, we didn't strip everything away. When we talk about rebranding, that's what the vision and mission into our strategic plan should be about. So when we talk about together something for every school and every student every day, that is our motto. That is what we are basing, but that does not have to be a part of the vision and the mission. That is a standalone. The vision and the
That's
mission.
a tagline.
Yes, ma'am. That's a tagline.
That makes a wonderful tagline.
And so when we were working on this, many members of the group wanted to incorporate that motto that we had developed into this so that it was recursive, if you will. But in some instances, it made it a little lengthier. When we talk about the core values, as Ms. Ray just indicated, those are things that we've already established as a school district. When you're creating something, sometimes you don't have to just strip things completely naked to start all over again. If it's not broken, don't fix it. And so we have those items outlined and spelled out. And so again, I'm just recalling some of the conversation that took place with the many groups that we had participate in this work, and the number of iterations that were put out there as we continue to develop the vision and the mission statement. And so at the onset, we really needed to define, just back to the conversation you said a few moments ago, the difference between inclusivity, equality, and equity. Not just utilizing terms just for the sake of utilizing them. A vision and mission should not be the establishment of one just to say you did it. You have to believe in it. You have to be a part of it. And so that's where we are at this time. So we can't move forward until we establish the vision and mission. That's who we are. That is our roadmap to success for our children. And so that's why it's okay for us to have these conversations and to continue to contribute and give feedback, because it only makes us stronger, and it makes what we stand for stronger as well.
Okay. I now,
Yes.
okay, I now see what the core values are, and while we all agree to, can all agree to the core values, when somebody is looking at this, so they're gonna do just what I did. Say, what is it? What core value, because I had no idea this is what you were talking about. This kind of thing was what you were talking about. And so when somebody looks at our mission, they need to be able to totally understand and not have a question about what you are talking about. I don't know how you gotta just, as this is being rewritten, these values are good, but we gotta figure out how will people understand what any of that means right here and looking at this. Because I could rewrite this thing. This is what I did. I took off, okay, the mission of Sumter School District is to provide a high-quality, diverse curriculum to ensure all students acquire the knowledge, skills, emotional support necessary to be successful. I don't know I didn't know what core values meant.
And so there's an extension to this, and there's another part that usually goes with the vision and the mission, and it's your percepts and beliefs.
That's exactly, but see, and that's where I think you probably need to take out core values and have that other part so that people can, in general, see that, not just, I don't know that you can make all of that a part of your branding, the real quick, everybody in the community know and understand what everybody believes and blah, blah, blah.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Galloway, I started talking. Did you want to say something? No. Oh, okay.
Ms. Galloway, could you share your screen again with the revisions to the revised statement?
I want to see the first one.
Yeah.
And can you make it a little larger? Can you cut it and paste it into a different slide so we can separate them and make them a little larger? Now.
Yes.
Thank you. So what I'm gonna ask her to do, because I saw that it was difficult for some of us to see, is to separate it and enlarge it. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. That's the teacher in me. Thank you.
And while Ms. Galloway is doing that, hearing the suggestions from the group itself.
Shelley, can you just pick a plain white slide instead of with the graphic on it and the blue bar, and just a plain white slide?
And it's right here. Hold on, please. I'll make it larger.
And as she's doing that, I was going to say that keeping in mind that the work that has gone into it, and I heard someone on here say not to let their work go to waste.
Right.
So I think fine tuning what they have, and just in my opinion, the revised vision statement that fine tunes what was recommended originally is the first one. I think it captures everything perfectly. What did I say, vision? I'm sorry. The vision statement, the revision of the vision statement that is the first one captures it perfectly of what was recommended originally out of the group. I still think that the second one is really wordy. The first one captures the curriculum piece. It captures nurturing, I think, captures the social emotional piece of it, and the safe environment, I think, is part of the core values of, essentially the core values that we strive for each and every day with our students with the global success piece.
And what I would ask is that as we're reading both of the samples or both of the provided revisions of the vision and mission visions, that we also look at it to make sure it encompasses the voice of every child.
Okay, so I don't know, a rigorous educational environment.
Okay?
What does that say to the disabled child and our commitment to that child?
So when we're talking about students who receive special education services, while they have learning disabilities, does not mean they don't deserve rigor.
Oh, I agree, but
Mr. Chair, are we looking at these two as separate statements?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And we're asked to, I think for brevity, I mean, there's no way we can, we can explain everything. Either you ask for brevity.
Right.
We have brevity. I mean, I think.
I just was posing the question. I'm not
Yeah,
saying
no,
I
and
disagree.
I.
That's all I was doing.
The wording, and what somebody is, on Boulevard Road reads this, and what they understand, and what somebody out in Gazelle reads this, they're gonna have a different interpretation. There's no way, in my opinion, Mr. Chair, there's no way that we can explain everything without lengthening it. And if we want brevity,
Okay,
I think.
okay. So can we just consider adding diverse education? I mean, just adding the word diverse into the show?
Or are you saying replace rigorous?
No,
with
I'm not
diverse, or
saying
adding?
replace it.
It sounds, what I'm hearing, she's saying just add
Just add.
diverse. The subcommittees are welcome to make recommendations, submit recommendations.
So I'm looking, I'm sorry, Dr. McGinn. I'm
So I'm
sorry.
just saying, the subcommittee members are welcome to make
Absolutely.
recommendations as well.
So I have my red pen out, my teacher,
Oh,
Mo.
diverse?
The mission of Sumter School District is to provide a diverse, high-quality curriculum to ensure our students acquire the knowledge, skills, and core values necessary for local and global
No, go back
success.
to the first one.
And
try.
so,
First one.
and I'm gonna add to both. So the mission of Sumter School District is to provide a diverse, safe, nurturing, and rigorous educational environment, or a diverse educational environment that is rigorous and equipping students with, I'm sorry, I just changed the whole sentence.
Yeah, let's try this one. Back to the first one. To the first one. Is to provide a safe, nurturing, and diverse, rigorous environment.
See, when I hear that, it's like the diversity is about the rigor. The diversity is about all of it. Providing a diverse,
Okay.
safe,
Okay.
right? So diversity comes before all of it.
And if we put diverse in there, it does capture the children with special needs, the children, it's just one word.
And back
Just
to
put
Dr. McGaney, his point, Title I.
Right, that's why, right.
Why don't we put it safe, nurturing, rigorous, and diverse, separate, and diverse.
Right,
That's
that's
it.
it.
That's
it.
That's it.
Would
That's
that,
it right there.
She's putting it in there now.
would that work?
Take that back to the policy. To the board.
That's
The
it.
first one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it's the shortest one, and it
Yeah.
covers everything.
Well,
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, I just wanna make sure that because this is a process that it's who we are and what we stand for. This is our motto, this is our, not a motto, this is our commitment, if you will. It's like saying your vows when you stand in front to get married. This is what we're saying we're going to do. We are going to be dedicated and committed to doing this. And I just wanna make sure that it is right. It encompasses our community as a whole, it captures what we expect of our children, and it should be what we expect in every classroom, in every school throughout our school district.
That's exactly right. Now, I think we need to hear from the teachers, from the educators on, see what their reaction to this is, how they feel about that.
Mr. Easley, Dr. Gamble, Ms. McBride, and all the others that are on the screen, whether you were on the committee, you've all had input in it because we included everyone. Any feedback on the recommendation that was just put up there? And I'm sorry.
You're fine. You still have the floor.
Excuse me, I agree with that, and I was, thinking about, because McCalla basically went through the same format, and I did steal from you, Shelley, the exact, because it was so perfect, we did the survey, what have you. But I think what really, because we were kind of stuck with our mission statement as well, but what really helped us, we went back to our beliefs to help with the mission statement. So what do we really believe? We listed our beliefs, and then that kind of helped, to get the mission statement together. If that makes sense. I hear crickets.
We're in agreement.
My only statement is that it kind of goes, this is Mr. Easley, it kind of goes back to, again, we have a very diverse student body, but as far as education, a good educator is going to provide opportunities that meets everybody's needs. And so hopefully we're already doing a variety of teaching methods and a variety of using different techniques and ways to reach all students. So I'm not really sure if that putting a diverse educational environment might be somehow not quite understood by some people. It kind of goes back to what was mentioned on, one part of the city may understand one way, one part of the city might understand some other way, but we do have a very diverse student group. So the education environment should, and I can see where the rigorous came in, because we're always told to teach with rigor, not to make it so simple that students just get it right away, but to actually make them think. So, but putting the diverse where it's at, I'm not sure if that really meets that goal of what we've been taught to go with. Because we do have a very diverse, obviously, very diverse student body. We have, everybody's represented. So I'm trying to think if that's maybe the best place to put diverse, because I think it should be in there somewhere. I just don't know if it's before diverse education. That's just, the way I'm thinking.
So I'm thinking, and you all can say no, and I'm okay with that. The mission of Sumter School District is to provide a safe, nurturing, rigorous, and what was before diverse? Rigorous educational environment that is diverse and equips students, that celebrates diversity or recognizes diversity. Something about the diverse aspect of it, because again, in my mind, when we say diverse with the environment, it's not the environment that's diverse, it's how we deliver and what we do that should embrace diversity.
Right.
Is this what you're looking for?
No, it doesn't make sense to me. I know that's what I said, but it's not working right now for me. That supports diversity and equips students.
That's better, yeah.
That supports diversity. And I might change my mind if you don't hurry up.
Okay, check as fast as I can. Here we go.
I'm going to read it again and I might change my mind. The mission of Sumter School District is to provide a safe, nurturing, and rigorous educational environment that supports diversity and equips students for local and global success.
Yes.
I like it.
That's much better.
That's much better, yeah.
Let's
Why do I
hear-
feel like there's a comma missing?
Let's hear from the educators now.
That's it from the educators.
I like that much better, actually. I think that really kind of gets to the business reason. I like that because it does support diversity as well as equipping, and it's rigorous. And that rigorous, I think, is needed to be in there because unfortunately we hear so much on the news and everywhere else, and I always bring this up when tagging, that teachers are lazy, teachers are not, they're just not doing what they're supposed to. And as Dr. Penelope Martinox said, that this is what we believe in. This is the statement we make, and I do think that this definitely provides it because it is safe, it's nurturing, and it is rigorous. So, and that it does support diversity and equips the students because we want them to be ready for not just the local area, but for the entire world. So I think that really covered most of the main ideas. I think we've been trying to say for quite a while.
Ms. Galloway, can you delete that last bullet so we can see it isolated to make sure that it still has that oomph,
Yes, ma'am.
please? Without the blue box at the bottom.
That looked like it was bothering you.
Ms. Lonnie, go ahead and read it out loud so I can hear it and not open my mouth.
I can't see, I got it. That's why I needed you to read
The
it.
vision of Sumter School District is to provide a safe, nurturing, and rigorous educational environment that supports diversity and equips students for local and global success.
I like that.
Ms. McBride and Dr. Gamble and Mr. Easley.
I like it.
I do like it, but I'm torn, you know me, the elementary person, between rigorous and high-quality educational environment.
Well, I do like high quality because there's, again, when we talk talk about equity
I
versus
like-
equality.
I like
There's the
that.
question of rigor versus, relevance. I mean.
Right. Because, and I do agree with you, Ms. Caesar, with the rigor, without a shadow of a doubt, but my, in experience with rigor with teachers, my rigor may not be your rigor.
That's very true, and actually, I like your idea much better. High quality gets more to the point, and that includes the rigor, or, you know, however we teach with the students, because like you said, each teacher's gonna be different on what that idea of rigor is, but high quality, I believe, is
Exactly.
a statement that everybody can understand.
Right,
And what
so we agree with,
And what I don't want is for us to just put buzzwords in there, just for the sake of putting the buzzwords in there, and rigor is one of those buzzwords.
exactly.
So,
Yeah, so high quality is definitely a better word for that, and then, like I said, it does encompass all aspects of that.
I will add it, do we wanna take a look at the vision statement real quick?
So Shelley, an English guru said, take that
No, I
dash.
didn't say take,
Oh.
I asked
The
politely.
hyphen, the hyphen
I
now.
wasn't there. There might be a reason, that's why.
Because sometimes it gives you the squiggly line and tells you it should be. Oh, I like the dash in
It looks.
it. Let's do away with the blue box and put the dash.
Oh, my.
The other members of the administration or staff that's on the call, you guys feel free to weigh in as well. And staff in the room, and I'm going to ask if it's okay from the committee, if we could get our mayor that's present, his input as well, because this is something that
No,
the community will have to embrace as
And
well.
you were part of the
I'll let y'all stay in the weeds with this one.
because you were part of this community.
No, I appreciate you being here, no.
Depends on what dictionary you look at.
Oh, this is the free dictionary, so that's the Cambridge dictionary.
Yeah, that's why I was always asking.
For what they do, it's not.
Mayor, did you say we were in the weeds?
Just a little bit.
No, we're not.
Yeah, high quality, the only thing that came to mind, and again, this is just David, is, I try to use the word excellence. And that maybe is overused sometimes. High quality excellence is all in back to wording. How do we do things with excellence? I'll ride my children about that.
Shelley, we looked it up, you put the dash back in there, so we're in the weeds just a little bit. Just a tad.
I wasn't gonna say anything, yes, ma'am.
English class.
Yes, ma'am. You weren't gonna say anything, so you just gonna let us make a mistake?
I wouldn't have let you make the mistake, but I would have corrected that later, it needs to be hyphenated.
She was slid it in later.
Do we wanna take a look at the vision?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me make this one larger as well, hold on.
May I respectfully request that we hear from the educators
Yes, ma'am.
about that, about the vision? I mean, do they feel like they can do that? What's in the vision?
I don't know if they heard me.
Oh,
Thank you for having me. Good night.
To Ms. McBride, Dr. Gamble, and Mr. Easley on the call, Ms. Loney wanted to know, do you guys feel that you can embrace what's in the vision statement? Is that something that's doable?
and that,
The vision statement, yes, I think so, because education, empowering, and enriching the lives of every student, and as we said, that's part of our what we call it, motto, or whatever we do anyways, and so.
Current motto.
Yeah, current motto, and so that goes along really well. It's something we're all familiar with already, and it's short, and it's to the point. And I think the lives of every student, that with everybody, every school, every day. I definitely think that covers it really quick, but that's definitely a vision statement. Vision statements are supposed to be relatively short and straight to the point also.
And if you want to make it short, you could just say every student.
Yes, I agree, certainly that I believe all educators can embrace the mission statement.
Vision statement. Why don't you just start with every student?
I agree. I like it. I like the tag. I just love the tag, every student, every day. So to have it incorporated in there, I love it.
Well, then we do.
School motto too, isn't it?
Yes, that's McAllister's school motto.
Yeah.
I'm a little partial as well.
I love it. I mean, I say it with conviction every single time I present this. It's just.
That was the one we began, and most of the schools began to adopt it.
Every student,
It's usually every school, every student, every day.
every school, every student.
We can swap that around.
No, I like the student remaining first because that's our first
Well,
priority.
Ms. Loney
Right, starting with the student first. Yes.
Ms. Loney raised something too as well. If you wanted to look at shortening, if you stopped at every student, that would still say what it needs to say.
But if they already using it.
But she said they already
That's what she said, yeah, some of the schools are.
already using it.
But again, this is about rebranding.
Right, we want to rebrand it. Mr. Chair, could you read it and stop at student, let's just hear how it sounds.
The revised recommended vision statement is Sumter School District educates, empowers, and enriches the lives of every student.
Okay.
What do you think? I'm just picking back up on what Ms. Loney, always every, yeah.
What if you did every student every day and left out in every school? Because that encompasses
Every student every day?
Yeah.
Well, that's good, yeah, every student every day, every student every day. But not at always every, that's like a catchphrase.
And that should still just be the tag on.
Right.
Now, Reverend McGann, I'm gonna come to you for some history on how something got into something. In our logo, it has educate, empower, and enrich. Do you know how that came to be, or?
What is it?
Educate, empower, and enrich, not around Pan. I'll have to go back and research.
How long has it been around? Because we are rebranding.
That's why I was asking, like, was it something that was recently added? Because
I can't remember around Pan.
It was added once after the superintendent was on board.
during consolidation, after consolidation, okay.
What is it?
Educate, empower.
Educate, empower,
And enrich.
Well, did we have a?
Is the logo?
Yes, ma'am.
It was I think it was Unified for Success at.
Just in my space.
It was Unified for Success for about 2 months, and then it changed to Educate, Empower, Enrich. That became our motto.
Chairman, I'm gonna be picky.
Yes, ma'am.
I just think, again, y'all have to bear with me, the preschool mind, it comes in threes, you have the three, educate, empower, enrich. So I think you should have every day, every student, every school, every day. And like Issa said earlier about the one team, we're talking about everyone.
So, Sumter School District educates, empowers, and
The power of three.
Oh.
It's stronger with all three in there, personally.
Okay.
And you all are talking about the power of three, and we're over here talking about whether every day is one word or two.
I was looking at it.
It's 2 words. Every day. Every day, that's 1 word is an adjective.
Every day go be. One word. Okay. So what's that?
And by putting that at every school in there, that reinforces the fact that every child is is being looked at from kindergarten through 12th grade. So, and beyond.
Those of us from the community will concede to the educators. So put your everyday school back in it. Every day, every 2 minutes. Put your threes back in.
Good work, team.
Sumter School District educates, empowers, and enriches the lives of every student, every school, every day. It's a lot.
Wait, last time you put in, did you put in every school, or how was it? Okay.
Thank you. All right, is that correct?
Miss Lonnie just said we conceded to the educators.
I'm gonna be quiet.
What you got?
Sumter School District educates, empowers, and enriches the lives of every student in every school, every day.
You can say that with conviction.
Mr. Chairman, while I understand that we're taking these recommendations, we also want to keep in mind the board has the final authority, and you got a couple of board members already saying that.
Well, let them take it up. Hey, let the
We
board,
don't want to keep going back and forth.
let the board members ignore those educators.
No, that's what I'm saying. We
Not
don't
us,
keep going.
not us as a community.
So let's kink it out here, because like Lee said, and I agree that there's a lot of errors.
Yeah.
We don't want catchphrases.
The one that came.
We want to be able to live up to what our mission and our vision is going to be. Like, we got the mission, the mission, we work through that together. And I think it's very valuable that we work through this vision. Now, we work through one part of it, and I think if you have some saying that there's too many everys, we can go back and forth all night. So let's try to trim down.
So, what if we say Sumter School District educates, empowers, and enriches the diverse lives of every student, period?
You talking about for the vision? Say it again, Mr. Chairman, and take the verse out.
Well, it's back to what we started with. Sumter School District educates, empowers, and enriches the lives of every student, is what we started.
Why don't we let district maybe fine tune it? Let's let them fine tune it.
So we're gonna take the recommendation back of the vision, of the mission?
No.
No, we already got one part worked out.
The only thing we have questions about is.
It's the average.
That's what we have questions about.
So I have
Too
something
many
else.
areas.
Y'all ready? Y'all working with me?
Yes.
You ready? Enriching the lives of every student, Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives
You said
of
lives twice.
all
right?
students.
Say that again.
I can't.
I already forgot what you started.
Yeah.
Enriching the lives
Of every student.
of our students, it's our commitment. Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students.
You said in lives twice. I think
Yeah.
Okay, well, if she would type it while I was talking.
You didn't tell her that.
Ms. Galloway, can you hear us?
There's too many everys.
I hear you, but with all due respect, it was repetitive. Because you said enriching the lives in the beginning and then enriching the lives at the end.
I just wanted everybody to catch on to it, that's why I said it twice.
They can take out the first every, put all students, if there's too many everys.
Yeah.
That's
See,
the
that has like
Yep.
a lot of.
So we can do that.
Has a ring to it though.
Every day,
Every
Sumter
student,
School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students in every school.
No.
No, of all students.
Of all students, and that's it.
No.
No, I don't know what I just
I
said.
was-
Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's short.
Then you have a separate motto.
And that'll be every student, every school, every day.
That's a
That's
tagline.
a tagline.
That's a tagline.
Every school, every student.
We like it, every student.
No, you know what, it's better one
Changing
before,
yours.
she said something about the T thing. She said,
Mr. Austin, did I capture that?
Can you make it larger and take this, blue box thing that's across?
Vision.
Yes, sir.
But, so in me, that my thinking, we're committed to doing that for what?
She said
They-
all
they're-
students
but-
shall.
It's supposed to be
for
all
students to do
Yeah.
what?
So the school district
Is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students.
Be good taxpayers.
I was saying, she'll gonna have to link them.
you don't have to say to do what, to be successful.
Okay, to be successful.
There you go.
To be successful, add, yeah. To be successful.
Shelley, add on be successful at the end.
So we don't have to, it just seems like it's dangling right there.
Be successful.
Or to succeed.
To succeed.
I like
To excel,
To excel.
excel.
Excel is better.
Or like Mr. Bridges say, strive for excellence.
Or as they strive for excellence.
Strive for excellence. Mr. Bridges used the word excellence.
Okay.
We're considering all the voices of all stakeholders,
So
so.
Mr. Bridges mentioned excellence, so we can say students to strive for excellence. Yes.
Sumter School District.
You can tell the mayor we need to be
To
I
stri-
think we enjoy all.
To excel.
Quit saying that.
We still take it for excellence, excel.
So it's okay.
Oh.
Shelley, did you hear that?
Hey, y'all having too much fun in there. I think I missed something.
You did. Reverend McGanny, say it again, please.
Brian said, say Brian, read it.
Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students to excel.
That's not what he
It's
said.
there.
Strive for excellence.
What you said,
To strive.
Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students
To strive.
to strive for excellence.
That's,
That's, I was gonna say.
That sounds weird.
well,
I'm sure it's something.
As they strive for excellence?
Strive is working for excellence.
So that they.
Excel is on just fine.
Excel.
See, doesn't it be,
It's got some,
Well,
it's got to
it's
have
got to
some.
something?
Excel is half of excellence.
Yeah, I like Excel.
Yeah,
We back to all the languages now, it's
Yeah.
wording
We'll
now.
get you here, now you run the rest of the.
Well, if we're really doing our job, they won't strive for excellence, they would reach excellence.
Yeah.
To reach excellence.
You
To
enable
excel.
them to
Excel.
excel.
To
To
enable
excel,
them.
let's go back to
To
excel.
excel.
I like
Tell
Excel.
Shelley, let's go back to excel.
To be.
It was recommendation, I'm sorry.
Enriching the lives of all students to reach excellence, not to strive.
To reach excellence, okay? To reach excellence.
To excel.
Acquire.
To acquire excellence.
Oh, we talking about the wording. The
Let
wording.
me write this first part down first.
This business might be very, very, very messy.
See, it's all like an objective, yeah, it's because.
It is short.
It's shorter.
And without any.
It was short.
It was short to
We
excel.
had
To
an
excel.
It was.
So that
To
they,
excel.
to enable them to
Excel.
excel, something like that. You gotta have something.
So-
to
Go ahead, Ms. Ray, say it out loud.
try that, let's see.
What is
Committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students, and hopefully to enable them to excel.
Oh, no.
Or to, you're gonna have to have something else there with, after students.
To enable success, to enable excellence.
To enable.
Sumter School District is committed to excellence by educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students.
To excel.
No, he said
There
excellence.
has to be something else.
Now,
Sumter
what-
School District, want me to say it again? What I
For
said?
them to,
Sumter School District is committed to excellence by educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students.
No, I don't like to enable excellence.
we committed to excellence of what? Don't run
That's shorter.
Okay, yeah, come on now, this is getting late, y'all.
Sumter School District is committed to excellence by educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students. Sumter School District is committed to educating all students by empowering and enriching. Why is there
Lives.
emergency medical vehicle? Is that a bus?
What about while encouraging them to excel?
I like the Excel better.
As we
I like
encourage
that.
them to excel.
Enriching the lives of all students
Tell Ms. Galloway
by
about it.
encouraging them to excel.
Well, we had like.
While
5 months,
encouraging them
5
to
minutes ago.
excel.
Yeah.
Okay, come on.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, because like I said, we'll be here all night, while encouraging them to excel, Ms. Lee like the word excel and Swanee, so I think we should take that back to the full board. That's a
Okay. Sumter School
recommendation.
District is committed,
No, you gotta take that.
you gotta
first
take
part
out to excellence out. Well, take out excellence and by.
Okay,
Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students while encouraging them to
that's
excel.
it, that's
There you
it,
go.
that's
That's
it,
it.
that's it, let's go with that. Mr. Chairman, take that to the full board, that's a.
Love it.
Okay, English teacher.
Members of the committee that's virtually, what are your thoughts and opinions on what's proposed?
Educators.
Are better.
What about, this might be easy, what about instead of saying while encouraging them to excel, instead say, well, let's see, some school districts commit to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students to achieve their full potential?
Too long. Too long.
Us all students to.
Because there's a lot of alliteration in that, educating, empowering, enriching, excelling, encouraging. I mean, there is, and each student's idea of excelling means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but reaching your potential,
The lives of all.
everybody's gonna have a different potential, and if you reach it, hey, you accomplished it, right?
That's what you said, right?
Enriching the lives of all the students while.
Ms. Galloway, could you edit this to say Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students to excel? No, wait, to achieve excellence.
No, oh, no, that's too much, I'm going to the word again.
It's too weird.
You actually eliminate
Achieve excellence.
Yeah.
to achieve excellence.
It's still missing, you gotta say,
That's not gonna.
That's,
so that they will
That's too
achieve,
much pressure.
yeah, that's,
to enable them to achieve excellence
But
or
it's what
something,
the
you gotta
school
have
district is
something
committed to doing.
right.
that goes out
Yes,
of the
yes,
station.
yes.
You think that?
I agree.
What?
Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students.
But you gotta say so that, to enable them to achieve excellence, you gotta have something after.
By
students.
encouraging them to achieve excellence.
And then you're adding words, and it's gonna be just as long as
Longer than-
Encouraging.
It's a mission.
I really don't
You-
understand why we got.
It's really saying the same thing, why encourage what we had just now, encouraging them to
To
excel.
excel.
That's basically just changing words.
Yeah.
You do need a verb before that, though. I do agree with Mrs. Ray on that one.
Yeah, you gotta have something.
You need a verb.
Then you make it longer. If you go back to what it was just now, it's gonna say,
Let's just say educating, empowering,
That's what I said a long time ago. But our superintendent thought that was just hanging, and it needed something.
Why you throwing me under the bus?
Yeah, I'm throwing you under the bus. I mean, this is not.
go ahead, to excel.
Well, just put,
That's a
take all that line. and
Because
just put,
everything else is
no,
basically the same thing, right? Everything else, is-
Educating, empowering, and enriching all
before we know it, we're
students.
gonna be getting longer and
Sumter
longer.
School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching all students to achieve excellence. We can take all.
To achieve it, you don't need to achieve. You don't have to,
Here's-
take something after
where-
school.
Where's the driving force?
Why can't we just,
The driving force isn't while encouraging them, you had it just now.
See, Carrie's right here. I'm just,
You had it just now.
so only because
The driving
I knew there was something, and I'm just gonna read a couple examples of other vision statements. Our vision is to develop well-rounded, confident, and responsible individuals who aspire to achieve their full potential. We will do this by providing a welcoming, and that's what I keep saying is missing there. This is what we expect of them to do, but what are we gonna do to get them there?
We're educating, empowering, and enriching them
To do what?
to excel.
Encouraging
To
while
reach their fullest potential, like Mr. Easley said.
while encouraging them to.
Because full potential means not just an act of achieving the goal, but it's every step along the way that will get them there. And when you say excellence, that is the standard that some children, as hard as they try, they will never be called excellent. Even though we feel they might be, the world may not view them that way. But if they achieve their full potential, that's where they're getting to. So that to me, that kind of covers, I mean, at least I'm thinking that way in my, science teacher brain.
Again,
That it's reaching full potential.
Like the STEM population, everyone.
The what
Yes, ma'am,
the what
exactly.
The what population?
I'm sorry?
I was asking Ms. McBride, the what population?
I think I'm not, the SPED, no, it's not, SPED, I'm not politically correct, the, students with disability population.
Thank you.
It's short for special education.
oh.
Because we're still talking excellence here. I mean, we're still talking, doing their very good best. Potentially to reach the highest level you can
We're
reach.
going with this.
What is it?
Go with this.
What is it?
Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching what?
All students.
The line.
The lives of all
The
students.
lives of all students.
But Dr. Martin, doesn't that parallel with the first one that you read, someone else's vision, mission statement? The one we just read?
Oh, I closed it, I'm sorry. I did away with it. I just researched one real quick.
You have to have the line.
Jump somebody else.
You educate students, you empower them, you enrich them.
Yeah, the summer school district continues to educate, empower, enrich, enriching the lives of all students. That's too much.
Because if we take the
It's
lives
saying
out,
it too
we're
much.
just enriching the good students,
There's something in right with that.
Enriching who?
the students.
All of them can go out.
This is why you can't do a vision statement in half an hour.
Sure, we take it back to the forward.
So what are we taking up?
This,
That and along with that, the one,
yeah,
there's one,
yeah.
lives of all, while encouraging the students to excel.
Excel, that's gonna be the buy.
That was,
That's gonna be the buy.
that's gonna be the buy right there.
Mhm.
That's gonna be the buy, while encouraging them to excel.
Because excel is not saying that it's,
Encouraging them to excel. Everybody gonna reach their own.
The own
Yeah.
potential.
they're all gonna reach their own
Okay,
goal.
let's, where are we?
Ms. Galloway, could you create another bullet point that reads, no, wait till you create the other bullet point.
To reach
So
their
those
full
are-
potential.
these
are-
To reach their full
We take both
potential.
of them out.
Yeah.
We're gonna take both of them.
Okay, what would you like?
Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students to excel.
All students. That's what we said to all students, while encouraging them to excel. That's what we said.
They're wild encouragement to excel. Well, they can,
That's true. There's some.
they can, I mean, they can.
So I'm gonna read a couple more. And these are business-oriented vision statements, because it's what are we doing and how are we getting them there? So, one of my favorite places, Nordstrom's vision statement is to serve our customers better, to always be relevant in their lives, and to form lifelong relationships. Starbucks, to establish Starbucks as the premier provider of the finest coffee in the world while maintaining our uncompromising principles while we grow. There is the what are we gonna do and why we're doing it. And so we are committed to educating, empowering, enriching the lives of all students
So
to
that they
excel.
can reach their full potential.
To help them reach their full potential.
So that they can excel and reach their full potential.
Let's go with full potential, because
Is
I
there-
don't think she heard me.
We're gonna, can you go back to the one that has full potential? I'm sorry.
okay. Maybe it's a little bit long, but that is.
Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students to achieve their full potential. I like it. It's better.
I like the educating power.
It still seems like it's empty, but.
Okay.
Is there consensus from the committee to take
Yeah.
the revised
Potential?
recommended vision and mission statement back to the full board?
Are we taking both of them?
No, we
It's
can,
Just this one?
and we'll,
Well, we can talk about it when we
yeah.
get there.
Okay.
You know, we can see what their thoughts on it, because the board has the ultimate.
It's just Shelley and Sage.
They will-
They vote.
you got these-
Okay, where are we now?
Okay, Mr. Austin.
Achieve it.
We said it through, he was doing it through the-
Well, there's two more things, really,
we need two more things.
What is this ADA and
Okay.
the policy?
So the board, the committee, I'm sorry, will take back the revised vision and mission statement to the full board for consideration and for further discussion. Everyone fine with that?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to item 3.3, review of policy KLGA school resource officers. And before I turn it over to Dr. Martin Knox and administration, I just have some concern with still some of the language, the criminal law language that's used throughout the policy. And also something about I'm feeling as though something about the training needs to be added to the actual policy. And Dr. Martin, I'll turn it over to you in administration for an update.
So, Mr. Myers, would you go ahead and proceed with providing updates as it pertains to the policy and the work that we're engaging in as it pertains to school resource officers?
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Chairman Austin, committee members, and Dr. Martin Knox. Mr. Williams and I have been working on pulling together information that's vital to the policy for school resource officers. Within the information that we have pulled together, we have a significant definition of school resource officers, and knowing that all of our school resource officers have taken the basic course as identified through the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy. And one of the key components to that, as I heard you mention, Chairman Austin, was about the language. One of the most important pieces was that we wanted to remove all of the punitive language from that, and that's the goal, and that's what we've been working to do. We've received significant information from one of the conferences that Mr. Williams and I attended, the South Carolina State SRO conferences, and we provided information that assisted with putting this together. I'm going to pause here for this moment and ask Mr. Williams to give some additional updates to the policy itself. Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Myers. One of the challenges when you deal with multidisciplinary organizations working together is when you do try to merge the language, because law enforcement have some language that they try to stick to. So in some of the updates we made to the policy, as Mr. Myers stated earlier, we try to remove some of the language that we could to move it from our SROs looking more like a better word, just police officers, to actually an extension for mentors, things of that nature. We capture some of that. Even in the definition, we went to from the training, we pulled this definition is a pretty standard definition, comes straight from South Carolina Code of Law, to address some of those things. As far as the training aspect, as I mentioned earlier, we started training together this year. They kind of opened the door to some of the trainings that are provided through the SRO Association to the district, and I've been sharing that training with our administrators and from the principals and assistant principals, so that they can be more abreast of how law enforcement look at certain things. We just recently did one on edibles. We got one coming up on game recognitions, and as those things come down, we share that with our principals so that they can have an opportunity to look at those things. The SRO policy itself, and I'll just pull some of the things we took out of here, making sure that we're calling them law enforcement officers instead of police officers. This talk speaks to our SROs and our administrators at the beginning of every year, making sure they're getting together to review the information and understand their roles and duties to make this whole process kind of cohesive. But it is an ongoing piece, and as we get things stamped out, because we're working with 2 law enforcement agencies that have different approaches to some of the same things when it comes to working with our students in school. So it is a work in progress, and Mr. Myers and I have met with them in a training, and we plan to do more of those trainings as the year goes on. But the policy right now kind of gives us a little more foundation so we can make everything unified between our sheriff department as well as our city police department, in addition to our district administrators. And at this time, I can entertain any more direct questions if you guys do have them.
Yes, and Mr. Williams, working in law enforcement a number of years, detention, working alongside with the officers. My question is, will this policy diminish what a law enforcement officer was sworn to do, which is protect and serve? And I understand we're talking about school resource officers. However, there are a number of things that happen on the streets, and now it looks like it's starting to carry over into the schools. And so the law enforcement officer can never stop being a law enforcement officer. So my question is, with the policy that you all are proposing, will it be restricting? I don't know, I'm asking, will it be limiting, restricting the SROs? Because although SROs are school resource officers, they're still law enforcement officers, sworn to protect and serve. And in my mind, in my heart, I don't believe being a sworn law enforcement officer, that if I'm on the streets or inside of a school and something's going on, I'm gonna sit back and do nothing when I've been sworn to protect and serve. It's in the blood of a law enforcement officer to protect and serve. And if something is happening, I just can't picture in my mind a policy saying, and I'm not saying that's what it is, I'm asking you, a policy saying they can't do nothing. Because in my mind, I just can't see them not doing anything. For example, if there's a gang fight, I just can't see them not doing nothing allowing the teachers to put themselves in harm's way to go stop a fight. So I need some clarification on this policy. You and Mr. Myers, it doesn't matter, but I need clarification on this policy.
Well, the policy itself do not prevent law enforcement officers from doing, because once the behavior becomes criminal, that becomes a law enforcement matter. So they will supersede the school and administrators in that aspect of it. However, there are a lot of changes coming down the pipe. So our SROs, and even from the SRO training, they're being asked, although they're law enforcement officers, not to approach their role the same as if they were in the community, because it is a difference. And they are dealing with children. So what the language is speaking of, taking that in consideration, when you start talking about socio-emotional and all that good stuff, all those things play a part. Now, there are some changes that have come down from the law enforcement department to the SROs on how they respond. And I can give a quick example when it comes to our SROs used to write information-only reports, where our city police officers still do it, but the sheriff's department do not do it. And that's out of our control. That's coming from their superior. But one of the things this policy speaks to, that will speak to what you're talking about, Mr. McGahey, is that SROs are supervised by the law enforcement agency and not the school. So they do have the discretion to determine which behaviors they need to engage in. In this policy, it speaks that our SROs are not disciplinarians. That's not their role. Once again, this policy speaks that the SROs and administrators at the beginning of the year and as needed get together to look at how they're utilized in their buildings. Because one SRO may do something different in one building that they may not do in another building, but that's with the administrators. So what this policy does is start to lay, speak some ground rules on how this partnership, this marriage, I would say, between the SRO officers and our school administrators. But at any time it's criminal, that's law enforcement, and that's what they're there for. They'll supersede in that aspect. And I'll yield to Mr. Myers for any other follow-up comments.
Yes, Mr. McGahey, in addition to that, our administrative teams are aware of the workings of our SROs, and we've always asked, even during the training, our SROs to be in the area as to if there is a disturbance, to be in the area, and if needed to assist, administrators will give them those directives to do so. However, if it is a criminal act that they detect, then they go into action, not holding back with that. So there are no necessary restrictions. However, we have to stay within what we've agreed that we're going to do based off what that administrator and that SRO has engaged in, as we said at the beginning of the year, and continuing on as we move on throughout the school year.
Mr. Williams, you stated earlier that we don't have any policies in place for the SROs, but they are only working in the position of a law enforcement. The policies that are being written, at what point will it be implemented for everybody to be working as the same?
Well, we do have policy. We have the KLGA, which is the SRO policy. Then we have the KLG, which is for law enforcement in general. We do have, this is our basic outline, but once again, it's still a work in progress as far as merging our sheriff department and our city police department, and how both units look at the behavior. I think this will be an ongoing thing, but once again, as the policy states, the supervisor of the SRO comes from that particular agency. So that's why that looks different. So that may be something a little beyond us. But our basic expectations, training, and approaches to certain things, we want that to be as consistent as possible. And as we go further, we'll continue to mend that to get us going, maintaining us in the direction we're trying to go.
One last thing, Mr. Williams, has the city and the sheriff department and our school, Mr. Myers, have sat down with those two different entities and come up with something? Because you keep saying we're working in two different directions, so that means we're gonna have two different separate policies where the city working in the school and where the county's working in the school, so kids are gonna be treated differently.
Well, not separate policies, separate approaches. And yes, we've sat down to look at training, to look at this policy, and present this to the board, to the committee to take forward to the board to review and approve. But just one more cog in our wheel to move this process forward. Because currently we're operating off the policy as written. And these suggestions here that the committee has come up with and proposed to you guys are designed to start to move us closer to the direction that we want to go in.
Mr. Myers, the first question is for you, Mr. Myers. You mentioned that the administrators, and I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. The example, if there's a disturbance, so there's a disturbance, you're saying the administrator have the authority to utilize the SRO officer?
Yes, sir. We always indicate to the SROs that they need to always be in the vicinity of any type of disturbance. That's the only way that they would be able to tell whether they need to move in and act. If it's a criminal matter, they would be able to detect that, but many times it may just be a disturbance in a classroom that if the administrators are there and they need that assistance, that SRO is in the vicinity, so they can just beckon to them for them to assist in whatever way they need them to.
So if they're in the vicinity, if are not in the vicinity, it is expected for the administrator to try to handle the disturbance first. Is that what I'm hearing? If it's not criminal.
That is correct.
Okay, if it's not criminal.
Well, but what is if it's not criminal? I mean, if they're fighting, if they're fighting.
I see where you're going. That's
So,
what I'm trying to get
my
out.
point, wait a minute now, because I think, but you understand where I'm going, but you understand I'm gonna take a different position
Yeah.
from your position
Correct.
on that.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay, so.
But I want to hear from them.
Yeah, but see, where we going with this is, if there's a fight, if there's a fight on campus, and they're hitting each other and all of that, that technically, from a law enforcement perspective, both of them could be charged.
Right.
Now, that's what he's trying to be sure that they get to do that. I, on the other hand, think that administration ought to be allowed to go there and to the extent possible as they can, try to break it up. So that there are no charges, just to break it up. Because if you get law enforcement involved in a fight, you starting to get into, they're gonna take these kids downtown and they're gonna be criminally charged.
And I understand that. However, you also have to take the safety of that
I know,
administrator.
but the administrator.
Because they may get hurt.
I know that, no, we understand that.
Right.
But they need to at least be there to try. I mean,
Right.
we're not expecting an administrator to jump in the middle of.
Well, we can't take anything for granted now in this day and age in any of our schools now.
And Reverend Gandhi, I hear your argument, and Ms. Loney, I hear your argument as well. But what has not been brought up is that a federal judge sided with students about the broadly written laws against disorderly conduct in disturbing schools that allow police to arrest and cite students for routine misbehavior. And that's what Ms. Loney is getting at, is that the administrator has authority over that building.
Understand.
The SRO is simply serving in that building to assist when something rises to the level of a criminal offense.
Right.
This policy does not define what a criminal offense is. A criminal offense could be fighting. A criminal offense could be seen as kids talking back and not obeying the orders of the teacher or the administrator. Who is going to define criminal offense?
And that was my that was going to be my question for Mr. Williams, because he mentioned earlier that law enforcement are not disciplinary, so I was going to ask him to define that, but you just hit it on the head, that we don't, our power does not explain in detail and fine tune to what
And they've
consider.
been ordered, South Carolina has been ordered to not enforce the disorderly conduct law against students in K through 12 schools. So therefore, law enforcement officers should not be responding to a fight unless it reaches that level of severity.
I understand that.
And I understand the safety of our administrators as well.
Not just administrators,
Our other students.
law enforcement officers, administrators, or anybody, because the students are a different breed now than how they was years ago. And with that being said, I want to speak on this subject. Are there any discussions about metal detectors coming in all of our schools? That's just, I just want to throw that out there.
So we have tossed that around. I know that there's conversation about another school district in South Carolina that's considering metal detectors. But we have had those conversations, but nothing has evolved completely about it. And so to all of your points that you just mentioned, just putting my 2 cents in, I think what has to happen is clarity in defining what a disturbance is, right? And what I usually say is the rule of thumb: if a police officer is in the mall and there's a brawl that takes place, they intervene, they step in, they use multiple mechanisms to disperse the crowd, to make sure everybody's safe, but also to deal with the disturbance. In the schoolhouse, when you're discussing a disturbance, it depends on who you ask. When you're talking about a child without a pencil, or talking about a child who's leaning back on the chair, or a child who's talking back, it can be disturbing to the classroom, but it is not a disturbance across the schoolhouse. And so oftentimes we have our law enforcement who are put in difficult situations and challenging situations when they are called for menial management matters that should be that of the administrator. When it is a criminal offense or a criminal matter, it doesn't matter whether it's in the schoolhouse, on the school grounds, administrators take the back seat to the law enforcement officer. So to your point, once law enforcement is involved, they go to action and they do what they've been trained to do. No one should step in and intervene when they are doing their job. That's why it's most important that we put all the supports in place for our children to prevent disruptive behaviors that lead to criminal matters, because then what that does do is it feeds the school to prison pipeline.
It does.
I mean, that's the bottom line. When we are disciplining children, discipline is about correcting the behavior. We need to make sure that we're putting supports in place, but we also have to safeguard the learning environment. School is not a place for disruption. Every child who comes to school, and that's why it's so important to have that vision and mission statement that is solid, so everyone knows what the expectations are. No, we're not going to tolerate disruption in our schools, and we will deal with those behaviors accordingly. But in the same token, I want to make sure that we're not putting our police officers, our deputies, in a predicament where they could be charged for trying to help stabilize the learning environment. There are cases, all you have to do is Google it. I mean, every day there are officers around South Carolina, around the nation, who are being charged because of the way in which they intervene in a situation. They're trained a little differently. Back to what you said a few moments ago, Reverend McGaney. They're trained a little differently. The administrator has a different type of training. The behavior intervention specialist has a different type of training. Law enforcement is trained totally different when they're stepping into situations to diffuse what's happening that's causing disruption to the learning environment. So with this policy, we are basing the policy based on school law and state law, whereas officers and deputies respond to criminal law. And that's where the fine line occurs. And we can talk about this for hours and days.
We sure can, so we might as well move on. Because a lot of this really has to do with the training.
Yes, ma'am.
Of the law enforcement officers.
And of our staff.
And of your staff.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm glad you all brought
And
up.
board members had some concerns about this policy. That's why it's warranted for us to talk about it.
I'm glad the training piece came up, because I hear there's a training between administrators and SROs. But there's a piece that's missing, and it's far too often that I pass a school bus that's on the side of the road with a law enforcement vehicle behind it. And I don't know what kind of training goes into our bus driver training when it comes to dealing with disruptions on the bus. But a child talking back on the bus does not warrant law enforcement's presence.
Unless it's criminal.
Unless it's criminal. But if a child is,
Anything,
Yeah, I know you can say.
you know,
I know exactly what you
and that's what I like about the court ruling, that anybody can come up with a conclusion to say something is criminal. Because a child is talking back to me, he or she is talking to me in a threatening manner, so it rises to the level of a criminal act. But there has to be some mechanisms in place or some training in place to be able to conflict resolution or something to diffuse that situation where you don't have to call law enforcement officers to come to a bus because a child is not listening to your commands or to your directives on the bus. We're having too many interactions between students and law enforcement that are unnecessary. And I think that's where the work needs to go. What is a criminal offense? And what is the training? I think we need more information on what does the training look like? What are the components of the training? Even the MOUs between the sheriff department and the city police, that needs to be clearly defined. Because you can't have the sheriff department doing one thing,
Exactly, and
the city police doing another thing.
Exactly.
I agree.
And they're serving one school district. It's not, they're serving two separate bodies. They're serving the same student population.
I don't know whether you all, I don't know whether you all can do this in selection of the school resource officer, but I think that the school district needs to have
More input.
a significant amount of input in the interview process of who's gonna be the school resource officer. I just don't think that that should be completely left up to the sheriff, because you know what you need. And I'm looking at this thing about the completion, the training. I mean, it says, basic course of instruction for school resource officer as recognized by blah, 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 or the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy. I sure wish you all could mandate that they have to go to, all of them have to go to the school resource officer training.
They've been going. They've been going through training.
By the national,
The National Association of School Resource Officers, they have not been going to the national, but they've been going to the state trainings that are offered.
So, Dr. Knox, the resource officers that we have, they're just placed there, we're not interviewing them at all?
No.
That's problematic.
What about
It
professional
would be for me if I were you.
development? What about the teachers and the administrative professional development? What kind of training are they getting in regards to the understand of when a disturbance happened or whatever? They are the first. What kind of PD are they getting?
Sure. Dr. Gamble, are you still on here? Can I put you on the spot?
What kind of joint trainings are they
Yes,
getting?
ma'am.
So what is it that you do in the beginning of the year when you introduce your SRO to your staff and your staff to the SRO in terms of how they respond and how they interact? What are some of the things that you do? And then Kelvin, I'll ask that you chime in after her, please.
Yes, I include my SRO in my opening faculty meetings. And plus, I also share with my teachers as well that the SRO is not the first person they should call at doing a school disturbance. When I say disturbance or infraction, that they should consult the administrator, not unless it is a major issue. And of course, I introduce him to my students. He goes over his role with at the school assemblies as well, to make sure the students understand the role of the SRO in the building. And also we do some additional trainings with SRO and other members of the sheriff department in first semester as well. But I do have questions since I'm speaking about the policy. It's under the section that says jurisdiction, so I just want to make sure I understand it well. It's in line 6. And I won't read it all to you, but it says basically only when the conduct rises to a level of criminality. But I do believe SROs, I do understand they're there for support. And I think sometimes we think support is only about when there's an infraction or something taking place in the building. And they do have to work collaboratively with administrators. Because I use my SRO to talk to students, and it's not about a criminal offense. It may be just a behavior that I'm observing from a student, and I'm thinking the SRO may be a great person or another resource that could talk to the student if I think this child is headed maybe in the wrong direction. So I'm just wondering, with the language here, does it almost mean that I should not continue that practice? And I do think it's been effective when working with the SROs, because they do develop relationships with students. And I have in my building, I know my SRO has some great relationships, and he can speak to a child, and the child will correct the behavior immediately. So I'm just wondering, the way it's written, does it almost seem as if we're not gonna have that collaboration with the SRO?
So I think the point that you just raised is crucial, because our SROs are in the buildings not as the primary role to be law enforcement. And so that's why we've been, to be police officers. They are there to serve in the capacity of being role models, to build those relationships with children, to serve as a conduit between the school and home. And it also translates back to when the officers are outside of the schoolhouse. So what you're doing, I totally agree with and support that, because oftentimes we can prevent behaviors from escalating to the level in which they need to involve law enforcement. But that law enforcement officer also serves as another layer of support for children. And so, no, you don't stop that behavior. I think that is so important for you to do. And I'll just speak from my own personal experience. That's something that I did with my SRO as well. He did classroom visits, he walked the halls. He didn't just respond when something happened. They need to be present, visible, and available in interacting with the children, just as your SRO does every time I see him. Some of them just do it extremely well. And we need to make sure that that is a behavior that is translated to not just at Crestwood, but to all of our schools when we're dealing with our children. So no, you do not stop, and no, that's what that means.
Responsibility part anyway.
So with that language saying only when the conduct rises to criminality, we might need to reconsider that.
Well,
They
no.
say that you refer a level
Can
two.
I say something?
Yeah, but under the roles and responsibility part, they can still do what they're mandated to do what she's doing.
Ms. Wright?
Yeah. Well, and I was gonna say, I understand your concern, Ms. Gamble, but, I think even in that first paragraph, when we're saying what they, how we wanna use them, it's prevention, diversion, and social support. So that's there, and I think this is more when there is a
When they need to
discipline
respond.
problem or infraction.
Right.
But you certainly wanna use them that way, as Ms. Gamble
Speak
is.
to what she's talking about.
Thank you for the clarification, thank you.
Any other discussion on,
Make that evident, yeah.
any other discussion concerning the review of policy KLGA, school resource officers? Hearing none. Mr. Myers and Mr. Williams, I would say that the policy committee looks forward to the continued work on this policy, and working in tandem with you all to make sure that we present the best possible policy for implementation. But also we would like to, from what I'm hearing, is that we would like to have more regarding what is a criminal offense. We would like to hear more about the MOU between the sheriff department and the city police department regarding the selection of officers as well, and how those officers are beneficial in the schools, and when they're to be utilized by school-based leaders. And something like I brought up about bus drivers, there's a lot of focus or emphasis on in the building, but when that bus leaves that bus lot, who is responsible for maintaining order on that bus? Or if there is a need for assistance, who do the bus drivers call? Do they call the administrator of that school, or do they call law enforcement? And I think what has been happening is they have been calling law enforcement as their first line of defense. So I think there's some more work that needs to be done to the policy, and we look forward to working with you on it. Is there anything else?
If I may interject here, you spoke about the criminality and when law enforcement get involved in criminal stuff. I would like to request if we can pull KLG in, because that's the law enforcement policy. And in that policy, it speaks to specific behavior codes and so on and so forth when law enforcement are involved. And my second thing, as far as when you talk about how do they determine what's criminality, as far as the SROs, all that stuff is outlined in South Carolina Code of Law. And let's give an example, disturbing school. There was a law passed that a student cannot disturb school if he or she is enrolled in school, in that particular school. The only way they can disturb that school is if they're at that school and they're suspended and they get involved in some issue. Then they can be charged with disturbing school. But as long as they're enrolled in the school and supposed to be at school, they cannot disturb school by South Carolina Code of Law. So those things are outlined through the Code of Law. And I think if we look at the KLG piece and look at these in sync with one another, some of the other questions will kind of come into play. We can kind of answer. But this one is specifically speaking to SROs and not law enforcement as a whole. And I just want to interject that piece.
So, okay, we'll look at maybe to bring in another policy.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, see, that list.
Thank you all again. If there's no further discussion, we will move down to 3.4, discussion of policy related to the open carry with Training Act.
So, Mr. Williams, we're going to keep the attention on you, and Mr. Myers, are there any updates for the Open Carries Act? I know the last time we had conversation, we talked about making sure that we included the language on our facilities use form to make sure that those who were accessing the property, that they knew what the guidelines and the guidance entails as it pertains to the Open Carries Act.
Well, at this point, I know we have the signs in all of the buildings, and I'll let Mr. Myers speak with in reference to the church that we do have leasing the facilities, and we are looking at the language in the policies. But right now, all of the schools are equipped with the open carry signage that's required by law. And I'll yield to Mr. Myers for the church piece.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Williams. Had an opportunity to talk to some of the other school districts around the state in reference to how they manage that piece of it whenever they're when a church is utilizing their facilities for a program. They've indicated that none of the churches who have utilized their buildings have had anyone with use of or have been carrying any firearm of sorts. And that in itself was a piece that we needed to take a look at, because one of the pieces of that policy stated that churches were to be somewhat treated differently and that they could. But from the ones that I spoke to, they said that they do not, or they have not had those occasions where they've had to address that, and they've said that they do not carry those on their properties during those programs.
If I may, I know that state law says that you are allowed to carry a firearm in a school facility when it's being utilized by a church or an organization. However, with the rise in the number of weapons being found in schools, with the number of school shootings, I think that our policy should state that regardless of state law, that we as a body should not allow firearms to be present in our facilities. And that should be part of our form, our facility usage forms. I understand that they could inform us if they are, but how many times have weapons been dropped, misplaced, forgotten and left behind, and it's not discovered until a Monday morning when school resumes.
And this is nationwide, it's just not limited to just our
Right.
district, this is nationwide.
Yeah.
And I think, Mr. Chair, the Gun-Free School Zone Act, Federal Act, it doesn't consider the church, where they're on a school campus, or at least in the school campus, as a school. And I think that's the loophole, that we will have to take in consideration.
I understand the laws regarding that, but at the end of the day, the board sets the policy for the district, and we are the ones responsible for the facilities of the district. If the board sets the policy and says that we're not allowing the use of facilities to individuals that are carrying weapons in the school, then that is the laws that govern our facility.
Correct. That's true.
State law requires that we as a body implement policies and procedures for the operations of our schools. And that's where our authority resides, in being able to implement policies to prevent such things as this from taking places in our facilities.
So what,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, so what you're suggesting is that the board, in its consideration of leasing the building to a church, you have as one of the provisions in your lease agreement is that the church cannot
Correct.
carry firearms. Okay.
And I think it's something that Reverend McGaney brought up in his discussion about law enforcement officers. A law enforcement officer can't take the hat off of being a law enforcement officer. Regardless if a church is utilizing the school is still a school.
And you can refuse to lease it, I mean.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
But we have to put it in policy and
Right,
put it
right,
on our
right,
forms to
right,
say,
right.
this is prohibited in our buildings during the period of lease.
Because you have to look at that gray area, if I may.
Yes, sir.
You have to look at that gray area. If a church is utilizing the school and they're allowed to bring a weapon, something happen, or someone come in with a weapon, does the school district end up getting sued as well? So,
Oh, that's the part of the lease agreement we
right,
have with
and all that,
Right.
and so that needs to be, as Ms. Long stated, in the lease agreement, that no weapons.
I just think that we as a nation are seeing too many weapons in schools, and we're seeing too many school shootings. And to allow another avenue for weapons to enter in our schools is detrimental to the educational experience and to our community as a whole.
And Madam Superintendent,
Yes, sir.
I really believe we really need to take seriously look at the financial impact of getting metal detectors or something. We're gonna have to be proactive. And I know you said another school is talking about it.
And I am too. I actually talked
This is
to,
some school district.
no, and, okay.
I'm just saying, no, you know,
And I was just putting it on the table that it has been a conversation
Yes,
of
ma'am.
multiple districts, and I actually just talked to the sheriff today, and
Yes,
he and I are coming together to sit down and talk about moving forward with something like that. But of course, I won't move forward with anything like that without taking it to the board.
Yes,
No,
ma'am.
because you gotta have money.
Yeah, that's my, that's. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the Open Carry Act? Hearing none, we're down to item 4, steps moving forward. 4.1 is policies for further discussion by the policy committee. If it's my understanding from discussion tonight that we will continue to look at the educational equity policy, we will continue to work on the school resource officer policy and bring in policy KLG, law enforcement, for further discussion. And we will look at open carry with Training Act and how we could adjust the forms for our lease agreement, or facility usage forms, and our lease agreements with entities that are considered churches, utilizing school district facilities. Did I capture that accurately? Okay. Recommendations to the Board of Trustees is item 4.2. Our recommendation to the board is the revised vision and mission statement. The revised vision statement that we're taking to the Board of Trustees is Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students to achieve their full potential. The revised vision statement of Sumter School District. The vision of Sumter School District is to provide a safe, nurturing, and high-quality educational environment that supports diversity and equips students for local and global success. Is there any more recommendations to the Board of Trustees at this time?
Sorry, did you say that last one was vision? That was the mission, correct? The last one?
The last one was the mission.
The mission, okay, thank you.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion on those items, we're down to item 5, consent agenda. If the members of the committee have had a chance to look at the policy committee minutes from before, and if there's no objection, those minutes will stand approved. Hearing no objections, those minutes stand approved. We're down to the closing of the meeting. I will say thank you all to our committee members, our subcommittee members and staff, and as well as our community members that participated tonight. Thank you for your input, thank you for your dedication to Sumter School District, and thank you for your commitment to our students. This is a heavy lift that we have been tasked with, but your work is definitely appreciated. And I look forward to working with you further as we move the district forward. There's no further business or comments for tonight, and this meeting will stand adjourned at 8:28 p.m.
Good night.